Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today, but guess what? This is interesting because the show that we were supposed to have today was a live interview with the Ambassador of Colombia discussing the issues of Venezuela. And guess what happened? I got a call from his press secretary in Washington, D.C. today who said, hey, Egberto, could we go ahead and schedule this interview about 2-3 hours earlier? And, he is at the conference right now, and we really want to get this taken care of. So please, could you go ahead and schedule the interview for an earlier time? To which I said, of course. What am I going to say? You have the Ambassador of Colombia that wants to be, that has some other conflicts and needs to change the time of the interview. What am I going to say? Well, I said, of course. I will make it over there. I will drive over there to get that interview from the Colombian ambassador, and then I'll get back in time. I figured, okay, maybe I'll have an hour or so to prepare a new program for Politics Done Right, given that I know I would not have had enough time to cut up the videos that I did with the interview with him. So here we are. So I sat down and I said, what am I going to do? The topic of the show was the interview with the former Vice President of Colombia, who's now the ambassador to Colombia. And by gosh, I yet do not have a show. So what I said is, you know what? There's a whole lot of things happening today, and we can make a show just out of what's happening today, what's been happening, and what's gonna happen. So folks, here henceforth, estamos con el programa. We are here doing the program. What did I call it? I was writing a program for the Blog Talk Radio, and I said, what am I going to call the program today? Winging it? Because after all, for those of you who are just joining, let me just repeat that real quick because a whole lot just popped in. Today's show was supposed to be the interview a live interview with the Ambassador of Colombia, who was the former Vice President of Colombia, as well as the guy who was kidnapped by, the Colombian drug lords, etc. But they called and asked to do the interview earlier, so I had to drive all the way into town to do that interview. And because of that, the show for today is sort of a winging it show as far as what's going on. So what I'm hoping that you guys are watching the screen today, and you're going to say, oh, Egberto, as usual, has a telephone number, 646-716-5812. And since you are going to wing topics today, these are the topics we want to talk about, and this is what I want to ask you, and this is what I want to come on air and say. So as I go into the subjects that interest me today, I would love for you to go into the subjects that interest you. Because as I've always said, this is your program. I'd love to hear some calls from you. I'd like you to call in and say, hey, yes, we want to talk about X, Y, and Z. And whatever issue it is that you want to talk about, that is what we're going to talk about. Again, because the topic for today got changed on the fly. And believe me, I just ran right back into the studio after interviewing the Vice President of the former Vice President of Colombia, now the now the ambassador in Washington, D.C. We had a great interview. We had an enlightened interview. And you know what? I think when you guys see that interview, you are going to love that interview. Because I think we kind of, I don't want to say we broke ground, but what we did is we did a whole lot of frank speaking. He has his positions, others have theirs. And what we did is we made him kind of feather out his positions, and not only feather out his position, but defend a lot of what we think in many ways is not quite, how should I say, not quite defensible when it comes to American Venezuelan policy and what they're supporting with the Lima Group, etc., etc., etc. Anyhow, first subject then that I'm going to discuss, since I'm winging it, is Beto O'Rourke. Beto O'Rourke threw himself into the presidential race over the last 2 days, and a lot of people are, and the way the media is covering it is, for me, it's actually pretty disconcerting. Beto is a good guy. I've interviewed Beto as well, and maybe I'll find the interview and play the interview. But I've interviewed Beto O'Rourke. Beto is a very, very charismatic person who does not really answer questions that are going to hold his feet to the fire, and you can't blame him. He's a politician, and he's a good one. Now, that said, there's a whole hoopla. We all know that right now, the direction of the country, whether the media wants to accept it or not, as they're trying to get people to move, to the center, to the center, to the center. The reality of the matter is this country is not a center-right country. This country is not a center-left country. This country is a left country. And if you take a look at the policies that people want, even many of the people that are calling themselves centrists, when you ask them what they want, it is ultimately the policies that we support. And I'm talking about those of us that are on the left and further left. Those are the policies that are most supported by people. So Beto O'Rourke jumping into the race is it's a great thing. It'll open the door to give different points of view and hammer them out. Is Beto a progressive is the real question. Beto has some very difficult votes that folks are going to have to analyze and consider and decide whether that is worth their vote. Folks, if you're just joining us, a big batch just came in. Today's topic is not fixed. We're talking Beto, we're talking Venezuela, we're talking Medicare for All, we're talking anything that come by, because, as I said, the interview that I was doing live with the Colombian ambassador, we had to do it earlier. He called and asked to do or his staff called and asked to do the interview earlier. I just ran into the studio to get this, to make sure and keep our commitment to having a daily show, because that is what we do. We keep our commitments as best we can. So anyhow, Beto, as far as Beto is concerned, Beto has some difficult votes that he's going to have to explain, but he's a very charismatic. And one of the things that put him on the map is the empathy that he was able to show with those football players who are kneeling for a reason, who are kneeling for a cause. And in doing so, I think he showed the kind of empathy that a presidential, not only a presidential candidate, but a president should have. So if he ultimately is the one that results out of the Democratic Party to move forward, I think he would be a good choice. Is he the best choice? I do not think yet that he's the best choice, unless, in my personal opinion, and this doesn't apply to everybody, but in my personal opinion, if somehow he makes it clearer that he, and I don't want to just say make it clearer that he's on the left, but makes it clearer that the policies that you're going to support are going to be really middle-class centric, poor people centric policies, and not recycle policies that simply state they will do something they will not, given the experience that we've had over the last 4 decades with both Republicans and Democrats who have promised and promised and promised and were completely unable to deliver. So let's hope that in hammering out our progressive candidate or Democratic candidate, that all of that will be fleshed out. Okay, so that is on Beto. Later on, if somebody else wants to add anything about Beto, call 646-716-5812. Again, that is 646-716-5812. I would just love to have people call into the show today, specifically because we are winging it after having the ambassador, the interview with the ambassador done much earlier. Welcome aboard, Sally. Welcome aboard, Bob Hawks, Sally Salas, Michael Dean Newton. Great to have you all here. Hello. Yes, sir. Hello. So, like I said, folks, so let's now talk about something that I found kind of ironic. Whoopi Goldberg recently got very, very sick. Whoopi Goldberg, of course, from The View. And she stated that she was close, in fact, to death. Sadly. Now, one of the first things that she discussed on The View today, I just saw it in kind of finding topics for today. One of the things that she said was how she was just not distraught, but she was just tired of the insurance companies when she found out how a Whoopi Goldberg, even a Whoopi Goldberg, how she was treated by the insurance company. It's interesting. I found that quite interesting, right? Because you would think that the insurance companies, if just for a public relation issue, if they got a request with a person whose name is Whoopi Goldberg for some sort of equipment, that they will say, you know what, we better not play with this. Just give her the darn equipment, because this woman has a platform, and if she uses the platform, she may be an additional voice to inform Americans about the fraud that we are, about the fraud that is the insurance companies. And that is what she did today. She didn't quite put it in those words, but might as well she had. Let me first say, from Whoopi Goldberg's rant, it is clear that she does not understand what insurance is. But everybody does not have to understand, each person doesn't have to understand what insurance is. We only understand what insurance is supposed to do when we get sick, and that's fine if it were a working thing. What she found out is how insurance companies function on the back end, on the front end, is terrible. And not even with a name like Whoopi Goldberg would you get good service. Would they not question everything that they have to pay out to you? Whoopi Goldberg had a machine that her doctor prescribed. The insurance company wanted her to use a separate machine. So while the insurance company and the doctors and all of that fiddle with what she was going to get, she was not getting any care on the lung issue that she had. So even a Whoopi Goldberg said one interesting thing, because it's a system, right? We always talk about when the government taking over your health care. Right now we have the insurance company taking over your health care, and they can kill you too, right? I don't know about the government doing that. The most the government's going to do is overpay for something. The insurance company's difference is they don't want to pay for a darn thing. Now what happened is for the days that they are arguing about this machine, she was not getting service, which is how insurance companies work. And in as much as Whoopi could probably purchase the hospital, the allocation of that machine went through our insurance system. Who controls exactly what's going to get paid for, and then the hospital operates that way. So when you hear somebody complain about the government taking over your health care, it is imperative that you understand that somebody else currently has your health care. And that somebody else today who has your health care is not in it to make you healthy, is in it to make a dollar. Their goal is to maximize the profits for their shareholders. So every time they get a bill to be paid from all the monies they collect from you, their job is to try intently to not pay that bill. That is the definition of private insurance. Private health insurance, its definition, is to pay as little out of the money we have taken from you and pay it back to you. Because their profits come from whatever they don't have to pay back into healthcare. So if they want their shareholders to be happy, if they want their stock prices to be high, Our private system demands that they deny you care. This is something that Americans must understand. This is something that we have to find a way as progressives to put into the heads of Americans, that the private sector in healthcare is nothing more than a Russian roulette game. It's nothing more than having a gun to your head. If you're lucky, the bullet is not there. But if you're unlucky, the one bullet is there to blow your brains out. That is private insurance today. Until we understand that, and we have all these forces on all sides trying to tell you that somehow the private sector does it better. Right? The private sector does it better. We had 2 plane crashes. That wasn't the private sector who caused those 2 plane crashes. Lack of regulations and into the software is going to ultimately, mark my word, is the lack of regulations on these processes of critical nature to people that ultimately is going to be the cause of the crashes. Not that Boeing is an evil company, but Boeing doesn't want to have a whole lot of people on its back. Oh, you can't release. Look, if you are working on software, I wrote software for a living for the last 30 years. If you're going to work on software, there are 2 different levels of software. There's a level of software that requires full tracking, because a friend of mine, when I worked for NASA, we had a joke. We worked for a company. We worked in an institute where we had 4 companies: Planning Research Corporation, Lockheed Martin, Ford Aerospace, and SAIC. We were developing software for the space station, and all of our software, when we developed any little piece of code, it had to go through testing. It had to have a tracking of a line of every line of code had to be tracked. When it was changed, we had to be able to see what the differences were. All that good stuff, because we were going into a critical thing that you didn't have a human being that if there's a problem, they could just ship it off to space and fix it. So our software that was being developed for the space station would go through all these checks. And I always remember what Sashi Menon always told me. And because there are times that I would write software and it has to go through all these tests and it has to get all this, I'll get mad because I'm a darn good software developer. I write some complicated software. In fact, the software that runs on Microsoft Serial Communication that allows it to do some magical things, I'm the author of that. So I thought, why do these people be checking my software like that? And my friend always used to say, Egberto, remember this. There is no control, alternate, delete on the space station. The controls, those controls that are moving the space station, there ain't no control, alternate, delete if it freezes up. If it freezes up, how do you restart? If it freezes up, from what state do you restart? And that is why you should have this delineation of jobs, the delineation of what should be in the private sector and what should be in the public sector. And healthcare definitely does not belong in the private sector, because there are other forces that are working on healthcare that are intent on making a profit, and the only time they can make a profit is by ensuring that you don't get the service as much as possible. So they will find any way to minimize cost by eliminating service, even if a doctor says it is required. So I'm going to change my background and say, so do remember, folks, that if you really want to understand, if you really need to understand what is going on in our society today, what we have to we first understand the biggest part of our system, of our economy right now, and that is healthcare. Understand how that functions, and understand then the evil portions of healthcare, the evil portions of capitalism, the evil portions of these others, and how they directly affect you. This is so important for us to realize, my friends. This is so important. So that is the other subject that I wanted to talk about, Medicare for All, but based on what Whoopi Goldberg had to say. So now that Whoopi Goldberg is on board with healthcare, the next thing that we have to do is leverage all these people, right? Medicare for All, and get rid of private insurance. If you want private insurance so that you can have pedals that follow you to your bed and that you can have a nice bed of pedals and you can purchase insurance. They can sell insurance. They can sell private insurance that do that. Don't make it to be the basic insurance that we're talking about. Let's just not make it be the basic insurance that we're talking about. All right, the other subject I want to talk about, and I'm hoping that as we talk, people would say, okay, I want to go ahead and get into the conversation, and I want to call 646-716-5812. Because if we don't do that, what I will do is I will end the program probably at the half-hour mark or a little thereafter. Because like I said, the program for today really should have been the interview that I just did with the ambassador. But instead of doing the interview with the ambassador live, they called and asked to push the interview earlier, which is what we did, but we didn't then have the time to process the interview, to play that 35-minute interview to you, which was a pretty darn good interview with the Colombian. He was a former Vice-President of Colombia. He is now the ambassador to Colombia in Washington, D.C. He was visiting Houston for this conference, and it's funny. I got to attend a very expensive conference with a whole bunch of oil men and oil people from around the world, from Saudi Arabia, from Venezuela, from Colombia, from Brazil, from all these oil exporting nations. I was in the let me tell you, I go to a lot of conferences, the Democracy Convention, the Netroots Convention, all these different conventions, and I have not seen such a well put together convention where there are sky seats all over, tents, not tents, but stations, this was the most luxurious conference I think I've ever gone to. It was called, it's called the CERAWeek convention, I guess, and it's a whole bunch. I guess it's on oil or something, and that's where the Colombian former vice president, the ambassador was, and that's where we sat down and had the interview. I mean, it had everything, and I mean, you're talking about from food right back down. Of course, I didn't eat. I have, for those of you who remember, I have my book, How to Lose Weight and Be Fit Now. Well, you know why? I didn't eat anything because I learned that I don't just impulse eat, because I see all that good food that they had. But anyhow, going back to the subject, I interviewed the ambassador to Colombia who was visiting from Washington, D.C., and they called and asked to put the interview at an earlier time, which we did. And it was quite an interesting interview. And it was clear to me, and there's a piece that first of all, most of you who listen to the show know exactly my stance on Venezuela. I was and I continue to be a Chavista, and the reason why I am that way is because I think no country is sitting in a pool of oil. Its people should be poor, and those were the tenets of his populism. You're not going to be sitting on a ton of minerals or a sea of oil and minerals, and somehow have most of your population in poverty with the others wealthy. So I decided to talk to the ambassador for Colombia, who's a part of the Grupo de Lima, which is the Peruvian stake, if you will, attempting to oust Maduro. And I asked him some poignant questions. I included pointing out that suppose Angela Merkel decided that our election here, because Donald Trump won 3 million less votes, plus there was some sort of a external influence to get him elected. Suppose Angela Merkel came and said, well, we declare that election to be invalid, and as such, we are going to assign Nancy Pelosi as the president. Americans would not take kindly to that. So my question to him, why also, and you'll see his answer, why then, I don't care if it's a group of other other independent Latin American countries, but do they really have the right, whether they think the elections were fraudulent or not, do they really have the right to go there and overthrow this government that somehow was elected in whether you think the election is fraudulent or not? And he said, well, it's because of the institutions were not created. And he said, remember, the Bolivarian constitution, which was a revamped constitution by Hugo Chavez, gave them the right to have Guaido declared the president if there was any kind of, if the current president was elected fraudulently. To which one asks, what does fraudulently mean? Does it mean that Donald Trump was elected fraudulently? And if such, should others hold him to that same standard? Should foreign countries hold America, to the same standard they're now holding Venezuela to? And he had an answer. And then he said, but please remember, Egberto, that what we have here is we have a group of Latin American countries, solely Latin American countries, that are there making this a Latin American solution. I'm from Panama, so I understand what that means quite well. So my next question to him was, by the way, you said this is an independent group with Latin American countries. My question to you, though, is, was Abrams there? Abrams is the convicted thug, in my clear and present opinion, who caused a whole lot of debts all over Latin America with his policies. And again, he was pardoned, but he's a convicted thug from the Bush administration. And he's the same person that Ilhan Omar really embarrassed when she interviewed him, and he showed his disdain for her, likely his disdain for women, specifically women of color, in the way he tried to answer her or not answer her. But what he said was, well, yes, Abrams was there. So when you have what I'm seeing growing when it comes to Venezuela, and I respect the ambassador. I think the ambassador is a nice guy. But the ambassador's first call is to look out for Colombia. And part of looking out for Colombia means at some time appeasing America. And in appeasing America, what it really means as well is they're going to create structures that seem to be independent to ultimately get the will of America. And that's what many protesters throughout Latin America have been complaining about for decades. I'm from Panama, I know it. I'm now an American citizen supporting America and with a loyalty to America. But in said loyalty to America, one of the things that I think we ought to remember, one of the things that I think we ought to do is remember that for every push we give, there is a push back. And you cannot hope, you cannot take away the sovereignty of others. And sovereignty is not only territorial sovereignty. Sovereignty is also intellectual sovereignty. And what America is doing right now with Venezuela, and to some extent, sort of enforcing it by co-opting a group like either co-opting or forming, I have no idea which one it is, a group like El Congreso de Lima, not Congreso de Lima, but the Lima group, El Grupo de Lima, whose intent is to overthrow Maduro. I think that is wrong. I think what it does is it create more destabilization than anything else. But we have to remember, Abrams and all those neoliberals do not care about destabilization. Destabilization is a good thing. They love a destabilized America. They love a destabilized rest of the world because it's within chaos. It's within destabilization that money is made. So, I mean, it's just like the healthcare system. We want a healthcare system that is chaotic. If a healthcare system is chaotic, if you can't make money here, you make money there, you make money everywhere because it's not organized. In chaos, you can suck a whole lot of wealth out of chaos as everybody else is left holding the straw. Same thing with the chaos in countries. You know, when the United States go in and blow up a country, their companies then rebuild that country. Money. When we hear about America giving aid to foreign countries, everybody likes to say, oh my God, we're giving away money. They're giving aid to all these other countries. Take a look and read the fine lines about the aid that we give to these other countries. Many times that aid to those other countries are really supporting or is money that those countries are going to pay right back. Pay right back to American companies who are going to hire American workers. Let me tell you something about what happened in Iraq. I had a friend who was deployed to Iraq. And we know that that now, when we had all our soldiers in Iraq, we have soldiers that are cooks. In fact, one of my friend's sister, who was in the Navy, she was in the Navy. She was one of their best cooks. So the military has its cooks. The military has its engineers. The military has a little bit of everything. When they went to Iraq, instead of stocking up on the military talent, meaning food service and all these other things, what did you think we did? We got private companies to come and serve. I'm coming to the telephone calls now. I'm coming to 848 in a minute. To 314 in a minute. We got private companies to pay. We paid private companies to serve our military people. And I asked my friend, how much does it cost per meal? And the number I got, and don't quote me on the number, but the number I got was something to the order of $20 or something, or maybe more, per meal, per service person, 3 times a day. Now, if the United States military has cooks, the United States military has all these other people that serve in different capacities, why the hell would you get a private company to go out there and try to make $1 off of the taxpayer and thus inflating the cost of the service? Isn't that a very poor use of our money? Anyway, let me bring 314 in. 314, come on in.
Well, it depends.
Okay, go ahead and explain how it depends.
You see the same thing in school districts, especially the ones in the inner city where the lunches are supplied by foreign countries, a company that is, Tedesco and Aramex. So why come those local school districts aren't
on my radar
preparing the food for their children?
Well, you know what? I tell you what, now that you told me that is something else that I add to my repertoire. I didn't know that at all. Now, thank you for giving me that information. And there's on Black Enterprise Top 100 businesses in this country. In the top 20, there are about 3 or 4 that are in food service, staffing, and in that line of work. Now, of course, they're not going to do it. It takes somebody to put a plan together and go and sit down and talk to them and ask, would you help us provide the infrastructure and expertise or supply, whereas we can control the school district? There's a lot of money in it. But no, I don't blame the United States. That's what they're supposed to do. If they go into another country and they have to repair or fix, the options should be available for United States company, which you yourself, if you're a U.S. citizen, have the right to bid upon. Let me tell you, first of all, I completely agree with that part. In other words, if we are given money, yes, we can go ahead and put a stipulation that U.S. companies that can do that to help build something up. I have no problem with that at all. What I do have a problem with, though, Bianchi, is the following. Food service. Have you ever been in the military or been on a mess hall or anything like that?
I never been in the military. I was exempt from military service because of the employment I was in.
Okay, fine. But what I'm telling you is my brother-in-law, he was he was an officer, in the military, and I went on the aircraft carrier a couple of times to have lunch before and see all those great American citizens, officers, I mean, not American citizens that are sailors, the ones that are in the mess halls and all these things. We have the expertise in food service to do the job.
Oh, we do. I agree with you.
And
You know you know when the unfortunateness that Puerto Rico had with the hurricane,
yes,
and the United States put a package together, supply of foods for the people that was in shelters and things like
Right.
that. It was a Black American woman who had the contract out of Atlanta to provide that food stuff. I think this contract was like over $1 billion. I'm not sure. I may stand corrected. But that's the case what I'm talking about. Those opportunities should be made for Americans. For Americans to put together a lunch plate in the heart of America, a city putting people to work, it's going to cost more because Americans are paid more for their labor than they would if it was
I am
someplace
so
else.
happy that you said that, Bianchi, because of the following. This is the other thing my friend told me, right? What you said is true. We want to keep the price of American labor high because it's good for the economy. I agree with you. Now, that said, the people that were working in Iraq for these American companies who got the contracts were coming from India, were coming from Vietnam, were coming from all these places, and I think you pretty much know what that means. They were given, it's the same thing that we have in healthcare. Deny service so that we maximize the profit for the shareholders. The same thing with pay more for the food on a per person basis under the tenet that we want to pay paid high price for American value, but at the same time then we give them food that's grown in closer to where they are, which means it's cheaper, as well as give them labor from that part of the world, which is cheaper. Bianchi, stay with me. I want to get 747, and then I want to get 111. 747, come on in, my friend. Who do I have the honor of speaking with?
Hello.
Hello, you're on.
Hi, my name's Heather. I was actually a cook from a privately owned company that outsources. It was actually $56 a person per meal.
$56? I thought it was high, but I didn't quite remember it being $56. Where was that? And give me some more.
It was a couple of years ago when we were fighting against Howard Stern's butthole.
Uh-huh. And where was
Yeah,
that?
Howard Stern's butthole, New York City.
Right. Okay, so
Fuck.
Oh, so I see.
HowardStern.com.
Oh, so you're a comic call. Well, you know what? Thank you for calling anyway, my friend. I mean, this is a serious discussion here. I don't know what you get.
Well,
out of
don't
this.
even give him no consideration. Go to the next caller.
Yeah, I mean this is a serious discussion. Let's go 111. That is funny. But I tell you what, Bianchi, I do like to go ahead and even people that are not too much up there, sometimes you want to just give a couple of words to. I respect everybody. Come on in.
Well, it takes all kinds to make a world.
Hey,
nowadays.
you got that right, Bianchi. Okay, let's go ahead. My friend from Singapore, come on in. Come on in, Mike.
How are you guys?
Oh, you're not the friend from Singapore.
Hello?
Yeah, come on in, sir.
How's it going?
Go ahead.
HowardStern.com. HowardStern.com. Everyone go check that shit out. Fuck.
Can you believe that, Bianchi? 2 in a row. One came on
But
Skype.
here's the thing, though.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. But the opportunities exist. Now, I think that I don't know what the lady was saying. It was $56 a plate, but those things can be corrected if we apply the type of political pressure that we should. If we go back years ago when they were talking about the cost of toilet seats on certain aircraft, military aircraft, being completely outrageous, a boat and a nut being completely outrageous, those things was taken care of. But that opportunity, that military budget, makes it possible for activities to go on amongst American businesses, American service people themselves, and I have no problem with that. I think more Americans should get involved in trying to bid and land those type of contracts, because the more competition you have, it brings down the price to a more realistic level.
I what let me ask you this, Bianchi. You know how you're a businessman. You know how profits work. Okay. I don't have a problem with the free markets. Well, I like to call it free enterprise, actually. What I do have a concern about, and tell me that it's wrong, at what point is profit an expense in something like where you have a military with a whole lot of labor available to you? In other words, you would never really need cooks in the military, and in such a scenario, you should never have to have a portion of your money be considered profits for somebody else, whether that be shareholders or others.
Well, profit has to be a profit for some. You know, if I have a job today and we have labor on that job, okay, and I pay my labor and the job is complete, well, I still have to keep the doors open until the next project comes down where I can bring in more cash flow in order to pay for things.
Agreed.
If I don't keep the doors open, then when the time comes for that project, it won't be anyone reputable that can handle that project. It's the same thing with General Motors. You can't let General Motors go down, because General Motors is not only a company that provides a consumer goods, but it's also a military contractor that provides things that's needed in the line of war goods.
But again, my question to you again is, if if we're talking about reducing the size of the budget, isn't it more efficient in the military if you have the people and the capacity there to have them do things like in Iraq, take care of the food themselves?
Well, I don't know what the contract that was arranged between the United States, negotiations with the Pentagon and the Iraqi government. We don't know exactly what that is. You know, the devil is always in the details.
Yes, it is.
But companies just don't open the door and let you come in without some stipulations. Even it may be fair stipulations, or it may be some nepotism, corruptedness. But we don't know what was came out of that negotiation at the table.
All right, that's true. Anyway, let me do my quick pitch. Bianchi, then I'm going to come back to you. But before I do my quick pitch, I just want to say hello to Rene Perpetua, Michael D. Newton, Jan Higgins, Adam, Bob, Bob Hawks, and let's see who else is here. Sally Salas, welcome aboard. Thank you so kindly for being here. If you have any more questions to ask or whatever, put it in the feed. I'm going to try to read that. Also, I'd like to say, Rene Perpetua says, the whole health system must be revamped. We can't even get our yearly physicals. That is sad. Unfortunately, for many, that is still true. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and give my pitch and ask folks.
I don't understand that statement.
Which one?
You can go to Walgreens and get a physical.
I think she means a more in-depth physical than that, Bianchi. Yes, Walgreens will give you a physical, and so will other places give you a physical. But not everybody has.
Well, what else could they be looking for? Then what she's talking about something is not a physical. Then.
Well, she probably wants
but
something
a
more
physical,
diagnostic, right?
Well, then she should elaborate her words, because when you say a physical, thousands and thousands of young high schoolers go to Walgreens and convenient places like that to have physical so they can participate in sports.
Bianchi,
but she's talking about
Bianchi, you're such a Republican. Hold my friend. Hold on a second, my friend. Hold a second. Let me get my a caller. See if this one is a bogus call as well or not. Okay, 504, you are on. Is there anything you'd like to add to the discussion? Actually, 904.
Yeah, conservative Republican is the way.
All right.
HowardStern.com. HowardStern.com.
Oh, okay, great. You got your plug-in. Now, why would they be plugging HowardStern.com? I don't quite know. But anyhow, folks, I'd like you to become a subscriber of Politics Done Right. Please remember that Politics Done Right goes out there and get the work done. Remember, we even have today, we actually are here kind of winging a show because we were speaking to the Ambassador of Colombia to the United States, who was formerly the Vice-President of Colombia a few years ago, as well as was kidnapped by the drug lord. I forgot the name of the drug lord that kidnapped him. etc., etc. But anyway, if you're just coming into the show, please remember to go to patreon.com/politicsdoneright. That is patreon.com/politicsdoneright. And if you just want to give a contribution, just go to politicsdoneright.com, support our show. How to Make America Utopia is the book that I'm currently writing. I've written chapter 1 and chapter 2. They're already online. Chapter 3 is forthcoming. Anybody who subscribes to Politics Done Right gets to read the book chapter per chapter as I write it. But guess what? More to that. We have now the book that I've written called As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. That is now currently online, and all subscribers to Politics Done Right will have access to As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. If you really want to understand how this economy works, if you really want to understand how the healthcare system works, if you really want to understand how petro affects our entire political process, etc., that would be a great book to get. You can also get the book, of course, at Amazon.com. Amazon has it. Just look up As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, and you can get either an e-copy or the full printed book. And you know, even activists have weight problems, and I had a serious weight problems that had turned into a health problem. My weight had zoomed all the way up to, at some points, my max was 265. I'm not about 185, 190 pounds. Now, here's a funny thing. The only reason I really finally took it seriously, even though I've had a lot of undulations with my weight, is that my blood pressure got up to 240 over 140. And Bianchi heard me say that the first time. He thought I should have been dead.
Yeah, I can't. It's hard to believe.
And you know what? I tell you what, that actually gave me a scare. That gave me, I don't show scare. I don't show being scared almost ever. I'm always stoic in the things that I do, no matter what. And this one really got me scared. And I took it for once, and I said, this is how I am going to live from now on. And I have been keeping the weight off just fine. And I decided to write my daughter read the book, and at first she wondered, Dad, are you okay? But she read the book and she said, wow, it sounded like a chronology of what I actually did. And she said, but Dad, I think the last chapter, you should have made it the first chapter, because it was inspiring from the 240 high blood pressure that caused the issue. So what I told my daughters, I said, I tell you what, the second version of the book, I'm going to turn over the manuscript to you. You can rearrange it in how you want. You can add whatever you want to add, and we're going to call it From Father and Daughter, Egberto Willies, Ashley Willies, when I got it done. Anyhow, folks, please go ahead and register.
The question is, what were you doing to cause that type of calamity with your health?
It's a part of the weight, Bianchi. It was also genetic. My family, both my mother and father, has high blood pressure. My sisters have high blood pressure. So, I mean, that is part of our genetics to have this high blood pressure. But mine was close to catastrophic because of my weight, because of the stress that I think I was under. And this time...
That is it, the stress.
Yes.
Then your sister, your mother, all of you are experiencing the same thing that cause high blood pressure.
Yes.
It's not like this ridiculousness that they say, well, slaves was on the slave ship absorbing salt water that caused their blood pressure to go up, and it's genetically, it's why blacks today have high blood pressure. None of that nonsense. It's what was causing the stress for you and your family.
I am not going to say nonsense. I mean, there are a lot of things I think I would say we don't understand, Bianchi. My sister's a doctor. And I ask her certain questions about this, and she'll tell me, look, we do a lot of research, and we have all kind of research into why certain ethnicities, and I don't like to use race because race is a social construct. Why different ethnicities? I guess
ethnicity is right.
Yeah, different
ethnicity is right. Yeah,
ethnicities have different problems. Just like we have, some Jewish people have a certain proclivities to certain kinds of cancers, specifically certain types of colon cancers. So Asians and blacks and Latinos have a proclivity to lupus. In fact, my wife has lupus. So I mean, there are a lot of these diseases that seem to track particular populations that we don't exactly know why. And so, I mean, I accept a bit of ignorance.
Lupus can be dangerous.
Yes, I know.
Can be dangerous. But a lot has to do with the environment. When you take someone off of the equatorial regions and put them up in London, put them up in Alaska, well, it's going to have a lot of effects, not only biologically, but also psychologically also.
Yes, you're right.
Your story should be something that you sell in a way of disseminating helpful information to people. It's very valuable. And I don't know what your remedy was, but it should be turned into a product that can help many, many more lives.
Well, the product that I turned it into is my book, Lose Weight and Be Fit Now, Stay Away from Snake Oils. And the idea was you don't need the snake oils, you don't need all of that, you just need to, exercise is a great stress reliever. And also eating well, believe it or not, is a stress reliever. When when you're overweight, when you have high blood pressure and all these things, you know it. You may not have the cues, but you know all these things. And once you put all those things in order, and I think also what people saw is just living and doing what you want to do. It's like right now I gave up my company to do this. I am so much more happy because, as it turns out, I've always wanted to help. I've always wanted to assist. I've always wanted to serve, and in doing so, I think all of that is reflective in what has occurred since that episode that I've had. I've started doing the show full time. I've started all those things, and I think now it's the best time of my life.
You should do a book tour and take on some speaking engagements where you can get paid. Take the profits from being paid and do other wonderful things with it.
I agree.
We sit on you're sitting on fortunes, and you're not aware of it. You just think it's just another handkerchief or lump in the back pocket of your seat pants, and you don't take advantage of it. The next thing you know, that its time has came and gone.
Right.
There's a time and there's a reason for everything. And oftentimes people do not recognize that for whatever reason. But you should take advantage of that while it is still in its infancy stages.
Well, I'll take that under advisement, and not only that, I'm actually going to do some of that. I will be doing some speaking, so that's advice I'll be taking, Bianchi. But look, we are getting close to the end of the program. Is there any other subject that you'd like to talk about, my friend? That I don't know if you heard the beginning of the show, but this was a show that had no topics because I just interviewed the Colombian ambassador, and he was supposed to be live, and we had to do it early. So I came on with the expectation that good guys like you would call in and add to the discussion. Is there anything that you'd like to add to the discussion right now?
Well, there's a lot of problems that's going on down along the southern hemisphere. As far south as Argentina, of course, but there in Central America, I hope they get their act together. I really do. I hate to see people go through those things. The solution is not to leave your country and come to the United States where you would create other animosity and even some more problems. But they need to get that together. The Organization of American States is that area's quote-unquote UN. Get the problem solved, please.
Let me just say one thing, though, Bianchi, and I hope one of these days more Americans would see it. We have to stop depending solely on the media in the United States because we get a skewed view of how things are really working in, let's say, Venezuela, how things are working in Colombia, how things are working in Panama, Costa Rica, Honduras, Nicaragua, all these other places. I am now an avid reader of Telesur, which is it's one of the top newspapers that covers Latin America, but it also has an English version for Americans who don't understand Spanish. I read them both. I read both the Spanish and English versions and watch the videos in both Spanish and English because you get another world view. I had that interview with the Colombian ambassador today, and it's clear his direction was the same direction that Donald Trump has, but it is also clear that he's not. How should I put it? It is also clear that he's just trying to toe a line. And in fact, in the interview that we did, I tempered the question as a journalist that I played today. And I know a lot of my lefties will likely be upset with some of the way that I allowed him to put out what he said. but that is who I am in meeting that person halfway to give them the latitude to say what they are going to say anyway. And then at the end of the interview, I refuted some of what he had to say. And then in the writing that I'm going to do about the interview, I'll refute it in more detail, not hitting the person who is a good man. It was the Vice-President of Colombia. He's a good man. He just shares a different ideology, which is absolutely fair. And one of the last questions.
Well, yes.
Go ahead.
You're absolutely right. It's fair. But here's the thing. When you're in the situation that those countries are in, you have to realize that when you go to the table, you're not going to nowhere near come away with everything you want. And what you do come away with, there's going to be stipulations on it because you're coming to negotiate from a point of weakness against someone who has much, much, much strength and power. So until you get your house together where you can respectfully negotiate from a point of power, no one is not going to give you what you want. You got a lot of work to do on your own. It's really,
Go ahead.
It's really sad that you see people leaving those countries. Those are the ones that's supposed to turn the country around as best as they possibly can. You see the same thing with Africa. These Africans that's in the diaspora, who are living in the diaspora, who are sitting in the comforts and under the protection of another country, then they can look back home and complain about the leadership there and what is not progressing. They're the one who has the capability, the skills, and the talent, and should also have the will to go back home and progressively move their country forward, but they don't do it.
Now, that is a complicated point, and I'm speaking from the point of view of an immigrant who came over here at the age of 18 years old to go to college and decided to stay. There are there are very complex answers to the statement that you just made, which we don't have the time for right now. So it's a very complicated question. I mean, I've thought several times, should I go home to Panama and work on the Latino Caribbean diaspora, which there is pretty much rotten, they're leaving to rot in the town, in the province that I'm from, Colón. I've sat down in the dark for many times, sitting down thinking, my God, look at what's happening to Colón. And in my mind saying, would I be able, as a Latino Caribbean dude, go back to Panama and say, hey, let's fix Colón and make Colón the bastion that it used to be? Or I can imagine the same would go for the Costarricenses who would want to go back to Limón, or all these places on the Caribbean coast that have people like me, the Latino Caribbeans like me, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Guatemala, even in Mexico, the Yucatan. But it is more complicated than that. But Bianchi, it was a pleasure having you on the call. Keep listening, keep calling. You always bring some
Okay,
weight.
I'll talk to you later.
You have a wonderful day, my friend. Folks, thank you so kindly for listening to our impromptu show, the show that wasn't supposed to be. I really appreciate your support. Before I close, I want to ask one more time. Please go ahead and go to patreon.com/politicsdoneright. That is patreon.com/politicsdoneright to support this show. As you can see, you'll see I have two interviews that have not been processed yet. One about Ilhan Omar, somebody who has something to say about Ilhan Omar, and the other one with the Ambassador of Colombia that I'm preparing right now. Like I said, it's a whole lot of work to do all these interviews. It's a whole lot of work to process all these videos. It's a whole lot of work to write all these blogs. But there's a reason why it must be done. We have a media that isn't doing its job. It isn't informing as it should, isn't giving people the options that it should. And that's why we have independent media. I'm asking you to please go ahead and go to patreon.com/politicsdoneright. That is patreon.com/politicsdoneright. Become a subscriber to the show. Become a subscriber to independent media. And I tell you what, it's inexpensive. It starts at $1.99 and up. Whatever you want to give, or I said $1.99 or up, but it's really whatever you want to do, however you want to support. If you don't want to subscribe, you can always go as well to our website, politicsdoneright.com and just click on the donate button and have your choice of how you want to support this program. As a token of appreciation, those will receive access to how to make America utopia. How to make America utopia. The idea behind this is it's a book that I'm currently writing. I've completed chapter 1 and chapter 2. Those of you who are subscribers will have full access, and as I add more chapters, as the chapters are added, you will have access to that chapter. Now here is a caveat. You also have access to the major book that I've written thus far, which is called As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. I wrote this book all during the healthcare debate, and I tell you what, my friends, this book still, it informs you of the totality of the type of capitalism that we practice here. It informs you of how this system is currently holding back a whole lot of folk. But it not only tells you that, it tells you how can we really get out of this, and there are ways to do this, right? And myself as an engineer, a mechanical engineer, I know numbers. And engineers do one thing. We take the knowledge of everybody else and we build something successful for humanity, successful for people. I know that there's an answer. And that is what we attempt to do. We first attempt to educate ourselves, educate others, so that we really understand what's going on. And there are a lot of things that one needs to know that they don't. And we put that out there in As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. You can also get this book by either on Kindle at Amazon.com or the full-fledged hard copy. As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. But again, if you subscribe to our show, you also get to read it online and every book that we put out online. And as I was explaining to Bianchi earlier, I had a health scare and I decided to take my health into my own hands, and I kind of narrated through lose weight and be fit now. And just I told you how I did it and how I am staying where I'm at now and why I'm staying where I'm at now with my late weight loss and my fitness program that I've developed myself. Do it your way. You will develop it for yourself as well. You'll develop something that works. I gave an idea of how I did it, and you can follow what I did, or you can create your own thing. But, weight loss and all of these things are math. And if we just follow it and be honest with ourselves, we can do the best we can. So thank you so kindly for being a part of the show today. I really appreciate all of you that continue to be with the program. I ask many more of you. I need hundreds more of you, thousands more of you to support us at whatever level you can. So please go to patreon.com/politicsdoneright. That is patreon.com/politicsdoneright. Or if you just want to give a contribution, go to politicsdoneright.com, the website, and click on the donate button. Thank you so kindly for being a part of this, and you know how I'm going to end this, baby. This is Politics and Run. I'm Egberto Willies, and I am what? Out!
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.